Hi, I'm Jay with Filmmaker in a Box, and just doing some wrapping up here after a shoot and putting away some gear and doing some maintenance. And so we're going to talk about doing a little bit of best boy work today on the electrical side. I have this Arri 300 watt Fresnel that was used on a shoot. I've actually been using this for years as part of a kit with a 650, a 300, and two 150 Arri Fresnels. And discovered on the shoot that this light has a short in it, so although it looks like it's not on right now, it actually is on, but there's a short in the electrical cable back here, and this does frequently happen with use, with a lot of use, even though these are well built. You get wearings in the cables, and in this case it's more than likely a break in the neutral, and it's an unsafe fixture right now because not only does it not turn on when we want it to turn on, but it also there is a risk of electrical damage and a risk of burning because there could be a short. There is a short that's happening inside here. So this is what we're going to look at today, is this Arri 300 watt Fresnel and how to repair this. Okay, so here we have our Arri 300 watt Fresnel. Of course it is a Fresnel based on the lens there, the Fresnel lens. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up this fixture. And we do this on the Arris by simply squeezing and lifting. There's a hinge back here, and this little lip here just fits in underneath the ear here. So we just squeeze the metal a little bit and lift up, and we get inside the fixture. Using the flood and spot adjustment, we want to make sure that this is spotted all the way out. So that means that the lamp and the reflector inside are brought back away from the lens as much as possible. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take the lamp out of the fixture. We don't want to touch the lamp with our fingers because the oils in our fingertips and our hands will actually burn into the glass, into the quartz glass here, this tungsten halogen bulb, and it will eat away at it. As it heats up, it'll actually pit in and it could explode. It could get large blisters on it, or it can explode, so that's not a good thing. We don't want to touch it with our bare hands. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use just a regular Ziploc baggie, and I'm going to use this as a quick glove, just real easy. I'm going to reach in and I'm going to grab the sides of the lamp, just right around the edges here. And it just pulls straight out. There we go. Sometimes it's a little tight. But what we're doing is we are reaching in and we are gripping the lamp around the base, around the sides of the base here, and just pulling straight out. Now that we have the lamp removed, we're going to take a look at the area where we're going to be working. And in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and go full flood with this. So I'm turning my spot and flood to get the reflector and the lamp socket away from the back of the lamp towards the lens, where this is the area that we're going to be working. And this is the first place where we're going to start right here. This nut and this bolt are our ground cluster for the lamp. This green wire right here is the ground wire that comes out of the pigtail that connects into the ground of your socket, or where you're plugging it into. And this is our first ground lead that leads off to the socket inside here for the lamp. So that ground is connecting here. This ground is leading off here to connect to the housing itself, so that we are grounding the entire fixture. And of course, this blue part down here is also metal, and this bolt is connected to the metal, which grounds the back of the lamp here. So here we have continuity of ground throughout all of the metal non-electrical carrying components of the fixture. Now also coming out of the pigtail here, and you'll see this is the black pigtail that comes from here straight through the back of the lamp into here. We have this bracket here that we're going to have to remove, and that loosens the pigtail so that we can get to the wires inside, because that's where our trouble is going to be. Inside this pigtail is where our short is. So the first thing we're going to do is remove this ground cluster, and I'm going to find a socket that's going to fit that nut to do that. Okay, so I have a 9/32 or a 7mm socket here, and I'm just going to go ahead and reach in here and loosen up this nut right up top. And there is both a nut and a washer that comes off of that, so make sure you have both of those. And we're just going to set those aside. Now that we've taken that off, we have freed up our ground cluster here, so we can pull these off. So we got the first two ground leads off, and lo and behold, there's another nut under there that's holding the ground that comes out of the pigtail directly to the metal of the fixture. So we got to reach in there and get that one out too. And again, there's going to be a nut and a washer, so we will set those aside. And I'm within minimum focus there, so you couldn't see that clearly. Sorry about that. Now, in this case also, it looks like this bolt down here is loose, so that's going to drop down at the base of the fixture, which is a pain in the butt. but we're just going to let that happen right now. Okay, so now we have removed all of our grounds. Now we're going to go ahead and remove this bracket right here. Okay, so we pulled out those two screws and the little bracket, and now we have freed the pigtail. So this is now loose inside here. I reach in here, you can see that this is now loose and free. Okay. What we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and remove this piece to make it easier to get into these components and remove our hot and our neutral here from their two leads so that we can get the pigtail completely free. To do that, we're going to look at the back of the fixture, and we're going to find that there are 4 black Phillips head screws. Those are the ones that we're going to pull out. We're going to leave this silver one intact. We're not going to remove that, only these 4. But the first thing we have to do is remove this handle. That's going to be really easy. We're just going to have to pry it off with a screwdriver. Be delicate with it. Be gentle. Give it a little play. It'll come right off. Now that we have all 5 of these black screws unscrewed, boop, we can go ahead and remove this base plate from the fixture. So I'm going to make sure that the yoke's out of my way here. I'll give myself some slack on the pigtail. And I'm going to go ahead and just simply pull this away from the base of the fixture. Now, if we open this back up, what you're going to notice here is that this hinge now has come apart, because this is one of the pins for the hinge, and this up here is a pin for the hinge. So as soon as we separate out the back of this fixture, this door is going to come right off. But that's okay. We're just going to set it aside for right now. But now we can pull the housing away from the back of the housing, away from the front of the housing. We can put this to the side for a little bit and have better access to all of this back here. Now, it's even easier if we go ahead and completely pull out the lamp and socket assembly. And notice that there is a little worm drive down here. This is what you twist to flood and spot the fixture. So if we go ahead and twist this, we can get the lamp and socket assembly completely removed. It's a little tight to twist without the handle on there. We're going to take the 2 guide rails and we're going to set them aside for a minute. And now we've separated out the fixture. We have our worm drive here for our flood and spot. We have our reflector and our socket. We're going to go ahead and set those to the side for a moment. Notice that this ceramic block here is really just a junction point that leads to the 2 hot lines that lead to the socket inside the lamp housing here. But we need to be able to free these 2 cables, our black and white, our neutral and our hot, in order to get our pigtail free. To do that, inside here there's little teeny tiny flathead screws. So we need to unscrew these, and those will unlock the wires that are placed in here. Now, in order to get these screws out, I'm going to use one of the only specialty tools that I have for this particular job, and that is this jeweler's screwdriver, because it's small enough to get these little screws out. And we're just going to loosen these up a couple of turns. Just enough until we can actually get the wire out. Okay. Now we've freed the hot and neutral from the junction ceramic here. The ground has already been freed earlier, so this means that our pigtail is completely free. Yay! This is where we want to get to, because the trouble is going to be inside this cable. Now, we don't want to pull this out. This is a very, very tight junction inside here that's holding this pigtail in here, and it's a real pain in the ass to get back in. So what we're going to do is feed this in. Okay, we want to feed in probably a good 6 inches. And come and kind of pull this through. Because more than likely, where our problem is right where this joint happens, right where the pigtail fits into the back of the housing, where you get a lot of play going on in here. That's more than likely where our problem is going to be. When we cut into this wire, I'm going to bet you that there is a bad neutral. So now, swing, I'm going to take this razor knife here, and we're going to go ahead and cut right into the insulation here to get this off. Now be really, really careful when you cut through this. It's going to cut through very simple. We don't want to cut the insulation of the wires inside, only the outer insulation. So be really, really delicate, and I'm just going to just barely press here, and you'll see how easy that cuts. Just barely press. Just barely. There you go. So I was able to cut through that outer insulation without harming any of the inner. Now we're going to take a cut just right up the line here. Real careful. Real careful. I'm going to do that to be able to remove this outer insulation. Ah, and there it is. You see how that wire is bending like that? It's not supposed to do that. Can you see that? We were getting like a 90-degree. Basically, the wire inside is completely broken here in the neutral. Oh, and I just broke the insulation, so we can see that the wire is completely severed on the inside here. That's where our break happened, and that's why the lamp was coming in and out intermittently. So this is our bad point. We want to be sure to now put our new terminations further away from the bad point so we get rid of this. I can just break this off with my hand. There we go. Just to be safe, I don't want to make this my new termination point. This is where the weak point was. This is where the wire was. I want to come back in here where there's fresh wire. So we're going to cut back a little bit more of this insulation here to about here. And we're going to pull that right off. Now, we're going to go ahead and make this our new termination point. We're just going to cut the wires there. We'll match the black and the white. We'll make that our new termination point. Actually, I'm going to cut back some more of this so that I have enough bare wire to go from this connection here to my ceramic block here. So I want to be sure that I have enough to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this back a little further. Just didn't pay enough attention before. Now, you don't want too much wire inside the fixture, free wire, because that gets in the way. You want to be tight inside there, but you also want to make sure that you have enough. That feels good to me. I'm going to pull the pigtail back out until the edge of my insulation cut is right at the edge of the blue base. See that there? See how we are flush right here? That's about where we want that to be. Now, let's see, did I make these long enough? Yeah, those are going to fit great. And they're going to fit right into their terminals right there. Okay, so now I'm going to strip these just about 1/4 inch. Just a little teeny bit right at the top. That was almost too much there, actually. So 1/4 and I almost went 1/2 there. I'm going to give them a nice twist, keep them tight. And I'm going to go ahead and trim off a little bit here because I did strip back too much. Okay. Just want just a little nubbin. There we go. Those look good to me. So now we're going to go ahead and put the neutral and the hot back into the ceramic junction. Just slip it back into this little hole. Make sure it's inside the clamp there. And we tighten down the screw on it. Get it nice and tight. Give it a tug. Make sure it's not coming out or going anywhere. That's solid. We will put our hot line in here. Now, it actually doesn't matter which one is hot and which one is neutral. We can reverse the polarity between these two. It doesn't really matter. But in this case, I'm going to stick with the way that it was, which my neutral was here on the top and my hot was on the bottom. Make sure you're getting it inside the clamp in there. And we're going to go ahead and tighten that down. And there we go. Give it a tug to make sure it's good and tight. Now, At this stage, I'm going to go ahead and lock this down. I'm going to put this back right now. Okay, so we're going to take the bracket and put the bracket back here over our insulation, and then we're going to put the screws in. Now the bracket is going to be a little higher right now because it's going to squish down on this insulation and really hold it into place. So I'm only going to give this first screw a couple of turns just to get it into the threading, but leave it a little bit loose, and then I'll put the second one in. There we go. Now we can screw them both down real tight. Now we've got the pigtail secured back into the fixture really well, and our hot and our neutral lines are attached into the ceramic junction. All good and firm. Great. Yay! Now we have our ground line, and we now have a super long ground line. This is way too much in here. So we're going to cut this down, but it has this fancy little loop on it. This little crimped loop. Now these you can pick up at any electronics store or Radio Shack or any auto parts store. That means I'm going to go ahead and cut my grounds now, because all this has to do is loop around to right here. So that's as long as I want this to be. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it right about here. Bye-bye. And then we're going to strip it off just a little bit. Again, just about a quarter of an inch there. And now this slips right over here. And we pull out a crimping tool. And we're going to go ahead and give this a crimp. Excellent. So now we have a good terminal with good connection there, and that is crimped on really nice and tight. Now remember, we have this bolt that came out of the bottom, and there's this washer with that bolt. So we're going to go ahead and put the washer through the bolt. We're going to put the bolt through the base, and we're going to slip the grounds right over there. Now also remember that we had another washer and a bolt that was attaching this first ground line to the metal of the fixture. So that's what we're going to attach right now. We're going to go ahead and put the washer on, and then the bolt, or the nut, I'm sorry, the nut. Okay, now we're going to start to put our fixture back together. And in order to do this, we need to take the two guide rods that we had here, and we need to feed them into the back of the lamp housing here and here. And notice the little stop washers are on the back, not the front. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and put those there and there and kind of hold them gently in place. And then we're going to stick the worm drive through the little slot in the back of the lamp housing right there. And we're going to start to give it a twist. Now remember, this was a tough thing to do. In this case, I'm going to pull out a pair of pliers, and I'm going to help this along a little bit. There we go. Now, as we're getting this close, I need to guide these two guide rails into these slots right back here. See these two slots on the either side of the guide? That's where those guide rails need to go. So I need to guide them right into those little slots. Now they're in their slots and the worm drive is in its spot. So I'm going to hold this pretty firmly. We're going to give the flood spot a couple more turns to move that back firm in there. And now we've got that together. Now we're going to put this back onto the front housing. So we have our front housing and our back housing, and we're going to marry these two back together. But right now I'm just going to sort of gently guide them into each other. Just place them there because I want to make sure to put my door back on the right side. Now remember, right here is a hinge point and right here is a hinge point. And we need to put this rounded hinge here around these points. Okay, so this takes a little bit of finesse. So we're going to go ahead and slip it around the front one here. Okay? And also, our guide rails these two guide rails here have to fit into these two sockets in the front here, so that holds them firm. I'm going to guide the two guide rails into the front. There we go. See how those two guide rails are now in those front sockets? And now I need to make sure that this lines up with this rear hinge point. Takes a little bit of, there we go, I got it in. Okay. Now, the fixture is together. We're in good shape. Our door is hinged and working. Our guide rails are in their proper place. We hold it firmly in place, and we're going to start to put in our 5 black screws back in the back. Okay, we've got our 5 screws back on. Now we're going to go ahead and put our flood spot handle back on and realize that there is a keyhole in here, that there is a rounded side and a flat side, and there is a flat side and a rounded side to the nubbin here. I don't know what the hell you call that. Let's call it a nubbin. So I just need to make sure that I line up my flat side to flat side. Push it on, give it a good push, and now that is well connected, and now our fixture is back together. Now, we still have to connect our remaining grounds, so again I'm going to put the fixture into flood mode. We have the ground from the door, and we have to find the ground that goes to the socket here. Both of these are going to go over our grounding bolt here. Okay, we've got them both on there. Again, we have a washer and a nut. Washer goes on first, and then we slip on the nut, and we go ahead and tighten that down nice and tight. Now, as I'm tightening this down, notice that this ground wire is right up against the reflector here, and I don't really like that. So I'm going to guide this wire back here and turn this connector here to the side as much as I can, to attempt to keep that wire away from the back of the reflector. See how I did that? Okay, so now this wire naturally wants to stay away from this reflector. Okay, so now we have our fixture put back together. Our flood spot works. Our ground cluster is together back here. Our new hot and neutral are together. The last thing to do is to put the lamp back on. And again, we're going to utilize the plastic bag so that we do not touch our fingers to the glass of the light bulb. We're going to slip that down into the socket. Make sure it's good and seated. The lamp is back in. Now we're going to go ahead and plug in the fixture. And voila! We have a lamp that works. Cable's good, no short in the cable anymore. And we have a fixed Arri 300 watt Fresnel. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Jay Holben with Filmmaker in a Box.